everyone, it's Rich Warner from Introduction to Business Class. Today I'd like to talk about the importance of paying off debt very quickly, or fast debt payoff, if you will. You've probably heard the phrase, time is money, and it's especially true when it comes to paying off debt quickly. You may remember from a previous lecture where a 7% growth rate, for example, in your Roth IRA can literally take you to $1 million by the time of retirement if you stay healthy, invest wisely and conservatively, and steadily make contributions of about 10% of your gross income into your Roth IRA throughout your career or working years. Well, that same power of compound growth can work against us when having to pay off a loan in the form of either credit card debt, mortgage debt, car loans, student loans, what have you. And I'd just like to go over two examples with you here that will show you how to use and employ a debt payoff calculator from bankrate.com that highlight and underscore the importance of a rapid payoff or pay down of debt. So let's consider a hypothetical individual, a young professional named Rob. And he happens to have an outstanding credit card balance across maybe 2 or 3 credit cards of $14,000, which is quite a debt load considering the interest rates that credit card companies charge individuals and households today. And let's say the average APR or interest rate on the credit card loans from the credit card companies is about 19% per annum. So key that in right here. Furthermore, let's say that the minimum payments that he has to make across the 3 cards every month is on average about $250 per month. Okay? So if you were to multiply that by 12, that turns into about $3,000 per year in credit card payments if Rob pays the minimum on each card. Now we're going to use the bankrate.com credit card debt payment calculator to figure out how long it's going to take to pay off this debt and what the total interest burden or total interest cost will be to service this debt. And the total interest cost is actually the central thing to pay attention to because it tells us really what the true cost of the loan is. So let's hop on over to bankrate.com. That's bankrate.com. And let's find the credit card debt payoff calculator. So we type in bankrate.com and look for under the credit cards navigation menu here, go to where it says get advice and then credit card payoff calculator. So if we click on that one, you'll notice that on the left-hand side here, we have to input certain assumptions for our debt payoff scenario. In this case, Rob's credit card balance, we said, was $14,000. Okay, and the APR, the annual percentage rate, the interest rate across these credit cards is going to average out to 19% per annum. We're also assuming that the payment per month that Rob is making is going to be the bare minimum, which is $250 a month. And below that it says desired months to pay off. Well, we're not interested in focusing on the number of months to pay down this debt. We just want to see first what the minimum payment scenario is going to look like. So we click on calculate and we see to the right here our results, your results. It shows that the principal we have to repay is $14,000. The total interest on this loan by making the minimum payments of $250 a month is $20,652. You know, the total cost of this loan is actually over $6,000 more than the amount that we're borrowing, the outstanding principal of $14,000. That's very interesting in itself. Okay, so if Rob pays the monthly minimums here of $250 a month, the calculator informs us that the number of months that it's going to take to pay down this debt is 139 months. Okay, so let's go back to our spreadsheet and let's type in 139 months. Okay, in terms of years, 12 months in a year, we can divide 139 months by 12. We go equals that cell, 139. divided by 12, and we see that it's going to take about a little more than 11 and a half years to pay down this debt if we follow this strategy. And we'll also key in the total interest paid on this loan in this payoff scenario. Total interest paid is $20,652. And it's important to keep in mind that this long 11 and a half year debt payoff scenario that Rob is opting for in this case will actually impact him quite negatively. The interest burden of this loan is $20,652, which represents 60% of the total payments that he has to make. Once again, that exceeds the original principal amount that he borrowed when he used his card to make purchases in the past. But now let's say Rob has gotten wiser. He's taken a personal finance class and he's gotten some credit counseling. And the credit counselor has said that, if you can afford to pay down your debt faster, you'll actually reduce the overall dollar cost or burden of the interest, saving you potentially thousands of dollars. So he's like, okay, well, that means I'm going to have to increase my monthly payments then, right? And he's absolutely correct in that assumption. Let's say Rob is able to talk to his manager and he's able to get a little bit of a raise from where he works. And he's going to do some additional odd jobs on the side, some secondary income. Maybe he can flip some things online and open up a website to sell some things on an auction site like eBay or Etsy.com or something like that. Because of all these extra strategies, he's going to increase his income levels, which will enable him to pay down a little bit more than $250. So let's say he can pay down $500 a month instead of $250 a month going forward. So that means that we can increase this payment per month number from $250 to, let's say now, $500 a month. Now when we hit calculate, the Bankrate.com calculator says, okay, with $500 monthly payments, it's only going to take you 38 months to pay off your loan. So let's go back to our spreadsheet here. So in scenario 2, we're going to increase our minimum payments by 2 to $500 a month. The outstanding principal is still the same. Okay, we're still paying down $14,000 of debt, and our interest rate is still 19%. This time, however, the Bankrate calculator tells us that the number of months has declined dramatically to 38 months instead of 139. Now, we said that 139 was about 11 and a half years, a little more than 11 and a half years. But since there are 12 months in a year, we'll just divide 38 by 12, and you'll see that we just decreased the number of years to repay our debt by 8 years to 3.2 years from 11.6. So scenario 2, from a duration of pain perspective in itself, is clearly the preferable strategy. I mean, do you really want to go through 8 more years and prolong and drag out this debt pay down process? If you want to live life easy and pay only the bare minimums, you'll stretch it out as long as you can, but you're going to have to pay that hefty total cost of interest of $20,652. That's an enormous interest burden for $14,000 worth of debt. But as we can see from the Bankrate.com credit card calculator, that by doubling our monthly payments, we not only reduce our number of months from 139 to 38 months, but we've dramatically reduced our total cost of interest to $4,600, $4,645. Okay? So that's $4,645. And the difference between that and the previous $20,652 is a savings of this minus this, or a savings of over $16,000. So let's recap what we just learned here. We've learned, in fact, that time is money. By stretching out our debt payments, by paying only the bare minimum, we've prolonged the painful experience of getting rid of this debt. And by doing so, we are paying the most in total cost of interest, $20,652 to be exact. But by doubling our monthly payments, by being a little bit more savvy about his personal expenses, as well as increasing his income sources, taking on additional work, getting a pay raise, maybe doing some selling of items online, etc., he's doubled his monthly payments and dramatically reduced the number of months and years for paying down the debt, as well as being rewarded by over $16,000 in total interest cost savings. And that's an important lesson to take away from this example. Now, of course, if Rob would happen to be fortunate enough to get some further pay increases and he gets even more savvy about managing his personal finances, and in that scenario, let's say he can increase his monthly payments by an additional $150 to $650 a month. Let's key in these assumptions into the Bankrate.com calculator, shall we? Okay, so credit card balance stays at $14,000, 19% APR, and we're going to increase the monthly payments to $650 a month. We hit calculate, and we notice that it takes only 27 months to pay off the credit card debt. So we've reduced the pain of having to pay off this debt by almost a year by paying that additional $150 a month. And as you notice from the debt calculator, our total interest cost dropped further to $32.58. So I think you can see the pattern here. As we increase our monthly payments, we dramatically reduce not only the time that it takes to pay off the loans, but we really start to save quite a bit by paying down the debt faster. Okay, in our second example, let's consider the payoff of a mortgage. Because after all, mortgages are quite prevalent across America, as many households believe that a home is one of the most cherished and valuable investments that they'll make during their lifetime. And in most cases, they're absolutely correct. A home is a great investment for the long term, and many people have increased their net worth dramatically over their lifetimes through the investment in real estate. But just as in the credit card debt payoff scenario, we have options to decide just how fast we want to pay down our mortgages. And so we're going to consider three scenarios. Scenario one is a 30-year mortgage, which is a quite popular option. It gives households a 30-year period to pay off mortgages completely. Scenario two will be a faster pay down period, 10 years faster. And then finally, let's consider a 15-year mortgage, which is a much faster pay down of the mortgage debt. So let's say, the Butterfields, as an example. The Butterfields are looking to buy a home in a nice location, not too far away from schools for their baby daughter. And, the house costs $200,000. They've actually managed to scrunch up about $35,000 over the past 5 to 7 years in anticipation of buying this home. So, through all their, tag sales and selling things that they can get some money for, existing things, as well as maybe perhaps a contribution from a grandfather or a parent or so, they're able to put together $35,000 as a down payment towards the house. The difference is what they need to borrow. They need to borrow $165,000. So that is the principal amount for the loans in each case. So I'm just going to highlight and copy this cell here. Pay special values. Okay. And let's say they can get a 30-year mortgage for about, let's say 4.75%. All right. The 20-year mortgage is going to be a little cheaper because there's less of a time risk involved. It ties in with credit risk. The longer you go out into the future, the more uncertainty there is. Therefore, longer dated mortgages, longer duration mortgages, I should say, have higher APRs, generally speaking. So let's say the 20-year mortgage costs a little bit less, 4.65, and let's say the 15-year mortgage is at 4.55%. So there's a little bit of a savings there on the APRs because we're dealing with a more compressed time scenario in the case of the 15, especially versus the 30-year mortgage. We need to use Bankrate.com's mortgage calculator to figure out what the minimum payments are going to be. Well, in terms of how long to pay off the debt, we know that 30 years is 30 times 12 is going to be equals 30 times 12 months. That's 360 months for the 30-year. Likewise, the 20-year mortgage is 20 times 12 months or 240 months. And the 15-year mortgage is going to be 15 times 12, which is 180 months. Okay, so the 15-year mortgage is going to save you 15 years of duration, which is a much more compressed time frame to pay off the debt. But the two essential questions we want to ask ourselves is, what are the monthly payments going to be in each scenario? And what is the total interest burden or the total interest cost for each scenario? Those are the key questions. And the other question that we'll have to ask is whether, in fact, the Butterfields can afford to pay off a mortgage loan in 15 years as opposed to, let's say, the 20 or the 30-year mortgage. Now, before we jump on over to Bankrate.com's mortgage calculator, I'd just like to address an important issue when it comes to buying a home. Now, how the Butterfields, in this case, focused on a $200,000 home has a lot to do with their assumptions about their health and well-being, as well as their annual incomes going forward, projecting into the next decade, 2 decades, and 3 decades going forward, i.e. for the duration of these mortgages. The essential question that we want to ask is, what is the household annual income? I'm going to hyphenate this, annual income for the Butterfields. Because if the Butterfields are making a total of $25,000 a year, a $200,000 home is just way beyond what they can afford. Likewise, if they're making $200,000 a year or more, let's say they're making $250,000 a year, let's say they're both, one's a surgeon and the other is a very successful accountant or a manager at a big corporation, let's say, their household income may be $250,000 a year, which would make a $200,000 home quite inexpensive for them. They could easily afford to take out maybe a 5-year mortgage and pay it off really fast. But making $250,000 a year, they may want to focus on a much more expensive home, like a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home, for example. So the question I'm trying to focus on here at this point is, how much house can you afford given your household annual income? Now, I use the term household instead of an individual income because we may be talking about husband and wife, partners and partners teaming up to purchase this house. Therefore, the term household is more accurate than individual income. So if they put their financial resources together, their two incomes together, that is the household annual income that I'm talking about. Maybe the Butterfields have a total aggregate income of $65,000 a year between the two of them. That's certainly quite possible. Now, it turns out that there's a pretty good multiple that we can use to multiply our household annual income that can give us a ballpark figure as to how much house we can afford. And that multiple is the number 4. So if we multiply our annual household income by 4, we arrive at this number, $260,000, which is the maximum price that the Butterfields should consider buying. Given $65,000 of household income, they can easily deal with the financial responsibility of paying down a mortgage of this size. But what if their income was only $40,000? 40,000 times 4 is 160,000. And that's the highest that they should consider in terms of buying a home. So a $200,000 home is a bit of a stretch. Let's increase that to $45,000, let's say. With $45,000 of household annual income, we can afford up to $180,000 house. So let's say it's $50,000. Well, it turns out that using the multiple 4, if we divide the house price by 4, we arrive at $50,000 minimum household income required to buy such a home. And this is a pretty good guideline to use for buying a home. Now, there's another multiple that you can use, and that's the maximum debt load per household income. Our maximum debt load should not exceed about 3.3 times our household income. So if we're making $50,000 a year, gross equals 50,000 times 3.3, and that so happens to be $165,000, which is the amount of the loan that the Butterfields are considering. What this is telling us is that it would have been even better if the Butterfields could have put down a little bit more. So let's say 40,000 as opposed to 35,000. That way they would only have to borrow 160,000, and that'll put them below the $165,000 limit as far as their debt load that they should assume. Those are two important takeaways that you should keep in mind if you ever consider being a home buyer someday. Now let's get back to the 3 debt payoff scenarios here using the Bankrate.com mortgage calculator. So we're back here at the Bankrate.com homepage. We go to mortgages and we go to where it says calculate and get advice. Click on mortgage calculator and we can input the cost of the house is $200,000. There. Our down payment we said was $35,000, which is 17.5% of the price of the house or the cost of the house, almost 20% of the cost of the house. And we're going to consider the 30-year mortgage first, and we're going to say that it's a 4.75% interest rate. And once again, we're going to focus on the monthly payments for this mortgage as well as the total interest burden in this scenario. So the APR, or the interest rate on this 30-year mortgage, is 4.75%. We're going to hit enter. It automatically calculates for us the estimated monthly payments on this mortgage, which is $1,272, okay, per month for 360 months. Now, by the way, that $1,272 estimated monthly payment not only includes the mortgage payoff, but it also includes $75 a month of homeowners insurance and estimated property taxes, which you can adjust here by changing this assumption here beside where it says property tax. If there are any homeowner membership fees, you can input that here as well. That's for condominiums or people who live in, communities, retirement communities. They often pay a homeowner's monthly fee to take care of landscaping, maintenance, and things like that. So your total estimated monthly payments are $1,272. And to find out what the total interest burden is, if you click on this pay down graph here, and you want to pull this over to the very end to where it says December 13th. And when you do that, it says my payment breakdown as of December 13th, 2050, which is 30 years into the future. I'm doing this on December 13th, 2020. So 30 years out is 2050. The total principal repayment, as expected, $165,000 is the principal of the loan, or the outstanding balance on the loan. And the total interest burden in this case is $145,171. So that's an important number. $145,171. Okay, let's consider scenario 2. Faster pay down by 10-year period, so it's going to be a little bit more per month. Okay, so let's go over here to the left and change this from 30 years to 20 years. Okay, and we said that because of the shorter duration, the loan has a slightly lower APR. It's 4.65%. Okay. Our estimated monthly payments are $1,469 a month, which is about $200 more per month. Okay, so for $200 more per month, the Butterfields can cut 10 years of duration on this mortgage. What is the total interest cost of this scenario? Well, let's head on over here to this chart, pull it on over to December 13th, 2040. Okay, December 13th, 2040. Principal repayment is $165,000 as expected. That's the outstanding balance. And the total interest that we pay in this scenario is $88,790. $88,790, which if you notice is a huge savings. Okay? As opposed to $145,171, we're paying only $88,790, which is a difference of this minus this cell, or a difference of savings of $56,000. Let that sink in for a second here. By increasing our monthly payments by less than $200 a month, we can save $56,381 in total interest with scenario 2. That's a huge savings, wouldn't you say? For the Butterfields, that's over 1 year's worth of household annual income. That's huge. But let's not stop there. Why not consider a 15-year scenario? Okay, with 4.55% APR. To do that, we have to head on back here to our assumptions. The home price stays the same. It's $200,000. We're putting $35,000 down, and we're going to change our duration of the loan from 20 to 15 years. And our interest rate drops to 4.55% because it's a shorter duration than the 30-year or the 20-year. Notice that our estimated monthly payments have increased to $1,678. Okay, $1,678. That's $1,678 a year. How much more is that versus the scenario 1, 30-year mortgage? That equals this minus this. That's $406 more per month than the 30-year scenario. And this is a very significant question for the Butterfields. Can they swing an additional $406 a month? Where's that extra money going to come from every month? Will it come from savvy personal finance budgeting, where they can really cut back on expenses every month and only pay for the essential things? Does either Mr. or Mrs. Butterfield expect to get a pay increase along the way? Maybe there's an additional income source that can be considered. Maybe there's a side business that they can put together to help increase their income sources. But that's a very serious question to address. Not many households can afford an extra $400+ a month. I mean, to go from a 30-year to a 20-year, that's only a jump of an extra $200 a month. But to jump to the 15-year, that's an extra $400 a month plus, which may not be doable. So that's an essential question to ask. Okay, now let's head on back and explore the savings. Okay, so we pull out our grid here to December 13th. And as you can see, when we do that, it says my payment breakdown as of December 13th, 2035, which is 15 years from the present. Again, I'm doing this on December 13th, 2020. So 13 years from now is that date, December 13th, 2035. The total amount of principal that we repaid, and you can see this also in the amortization schedule here. Click to expand. You can pull it down all the way to the bottom here, and I'll show you the total interest payments. And you'll notice that our total interest payments are $62,998. You'll see that summarized here, $62,998. So $62,998. How much of a savings exactly is that versus the 30-year? Let's see. This $145,000 minus $62,998. That's a savings of over $82,000 in total cost of interest. That's huge. That's almost as much as half of the value of the home, okay, which costs $200,000 at this point. To recap, by increasing your monthly payments by $200, you can save over $56,000 in total interest. And furthermore, by increasing your monthly payments by slightly over $400 a month, you can save over $82,000 in total interest on your mortgage. Now, these are some very powerful concepts that you need to be aware of before you consider buying a home, if you should do so someday. But again, it shows you just how powerful this concept of rapid pay down of debt is, regardless of whether you're dealing with a credit card balance or a mortgage debt payment scenario. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on rapid payment of debt and loans, and I hope you learned a lot. If you have any further questions or feedback, please leave a comment or drop me a line, send me an email, and I hope to answer them as quickly as possible. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.